So, you know what's actually interesting that you have a bunch of swords in your room that I just noticed.
Yes, 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 yes. Most of them are not actually sharp, they're just trainer swords. A couple of them are sharp or were sharp, though most of them have been used pretty heavily and been worked down. I don't know if you can see the dowel over here right next to the mirror. They're actually, if
Okay.
you like see them, they've got like giant chunks taken out of like the blades
Oh, really?
from using
Okay.
sparring, just drilling and stuff like that.
Okay. So you actually like train with the swords and stuff.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Swords, sticks, spears, staffs, all that kinds of stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Even a little bit of not too much, but a little bit of firearm stuff.
Okay. Okay. So you're mostly into like ancient like weaponry.
Yeah, yeah. Not necessarily ancient weapons, but historical martial arts in general, historical Asian martial
Okay.
arts, historical European martial arts, historical African martial arts, whatever it is. I just really getting into like the history, the origins of stuff, how martial arts move from country to country, how they evolve from century to century, stuff like that.
Okay. It's interesting. Do you have any like I guess like weapon that you like is your favorite basically?
Um, I have two probably weapons that are my favorites. Um, One of them, unfortunately, I think of myself mostly as a kung fu martial artist, like a Chinese martial artist. Um, so most of these weapons are Chinese stuff, kung fu weapons.
Okay.
But I practice a bit of iaido, which is the Japanese art of drawing the sword, and so you use a katana for that. And so I only
Okay.
have one katana. I'm not like super duper into like fancy katanas and like getting like all the nice subas and the nice wraps and like, oh, katana is the best sword in the world. But it's one of my favorite swords to practice with. It's one of my favorite swords to use and to like research. My other favorite sword would be the Jain, which is not a very popular or well-known sword. Are you familiar with it?
Wait, what'd you say the name was?
Jian, Jian.
Nah. Is it similar to the katana or?
No, it's actually it's similar in size traditionally, like
Okay.
historically, but it's different in a number of ways. Number one, the katana is typically swept a little bit, not like too much, right? But it's a little bit curved. The
Okay.
Jan is a straight sword. It's a double-sided.
Oh,
Um, from what I have researched, it was predominantly used in the Chinese military for armored soldiers with a shield. So they would like use the shield to defend themselves, and they'd use the jam to like poke holes in the armor or like around the armor. Whereas like a more similar weapon to the katana in Chinese martial arts would be the Dao, or more more accurately the Miao Dao, right? The Dao is like we were saying earlier, like Dao just means basically knife. So it's like a one-sided sword. It's like if
okay.
you have like a butter knife, it's a Dao, right? If you have
Oh,
a big like saber, it's a Dao also, but like with it's a different type of Dao, obviously, right?
but you call
Uh,
it if it's like a one-sided like blade, I guess.
yeah,
You would call that a dowel.
yes,
Okay. That makes
yeah.
sense.
And if it's two-sided, it's a Jan. Just basically, regardless, if it's a
Okay.
dagger, if it's a long sword, if it's like a spear. I believe arrows are also called Jan. I could be mistaken. I'm studying Mandarin right now, so I should know, but
Oh, okay, okay.
I don't.
It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, the Miao Dao is actually uh because kind of stolen from the Japanese. The Japanese pirates were kind of harassing the Chinese for a little while, and they had these really awesome swords. They weren't really katana; they were nodachi, which is just like big katana.
Okay.
Um, and Chase was like, "Oh, that's awesome. We gotta steal those." So they basically just took the design and made Meow Dao.
Okay. You know what's actually funny? I do have I have one katana myself.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Heck
yeah,
yeah, heck yeah.
and I also have like one European sword. It's like a smaller like European sword. It's like a
Nice.
Spaniard sword.
I want to get more into European swords. They're really interesting and really cool to study the history. For some reason, though, anytime I go to get a sword, I always just like Chinese. It's a
Yeah,
problem. I need to fix it.
that's funny. So, you know what's actually very interesting? I don't know how much you know about like ancient like warfare, But like,
I'm trying to learn more. I wouldn't consider myself any level of expert.
have you read like The Art of War by any chance?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I read that. I've actually got a bound and a traditional Chinese bound version over here,
Oh, really? Okay.
right next to my bed. Yeah. Got that. I've got like a United States Army training manuals for like old historical manuals and stuff like that. I've got old military like Qing dynasty. Oh, actually, recently just picked up these 400-year-old Qing dynasty, or I think Ming dynasty training manuals for swords and stuff like that. So
Okay. Okay.
uh, ancient warfare is something I definitely want to get more into, but don't know too much about at the moment, unfortunately.
One thing that I've like researched at least is like how at least the ancient Greeks that I don't you obviously know of Alexander the Great, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I believe if I'm not mistaken, his army was called the Phalanx, right? And they would have like
Mm.
these super ultra long like spears
Yeah,
at like bay, right? And of course it would be like a line of like a lot of people, right?
yeah, I
And
love
every
that
person when they put down a spear, so even if like the really long end breaks, it's like they still have like a bunch of spears before they can actually get to the person.
for sure, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Another area it's kind of built into like that. We're talking about having like a large group of soldiers, right, with a long range weapon, so that you can keep your enemy at bay. And even if maybe like one spear breaks or goes down or something, you've got just like the mass to cover you instead. Something that I'm a little bit into is historical mounted archery.
Oh, really? Okay.
And you get like different tactics that you can find on that. Like something that, at least from my studies, it appears that the Mongols were like really good horse archers, but they didn't need to do a whole lot of like blitzing in and out and like shoot and shoot, 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 shoot fast, go away.
Yeah.
They could take like larger groups and kind of like move just out of range of whatever you could do and just kind of harass you, basically until you were available enough for them to go and do whatever else they needed to do. Whereas like you familiar with Comanche archery?
Well, is that like
Uh,
different from regular archery or?
yeah, yeah, Comanches. Well, mounted archery. One thing that they do really different, apparently, from what I've seen. Like maybe this is totally wrong, and they didn't actually do this, but um, typically when you notch a bow, right, you're bringing the arrow here and notching it. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a mounted archery, if you do that, because it's up like this, the bow is going to be bouncing. So you actually
Oh,
need a counter force of notching the bow this way, so that you're pressing up into the arrow and down, so that they're notching onto the bow like this. So one thing that does is it makes it a lot more stable, but it makes it a little weird and it makes it a lot faster for you to do it. So Comanches would actually not specialize in accuracy necessarily with their bows, but rapidity. They have competitions of like, okay, not who can shoot the smallest target from the farthest away, but let's see who can shoot an arrow up and then shoot as many more arrows as they can before that first arrow gets down.
okay.
So it's like rapid fire, point blank
Machine gun type.
machine gun fire, like which is a super cool, different approach. Like, okay, Mongo's like, yeah, we've got a lot of people, we've got arrows, we can just stick on the outside and just kind of poke you guys out until you're done. Whereas the Comanches are like, we're not that good at aiming, but we're super good at shooting fast. So we're just gonna blitz into you guys and point blank shoot you with like 3 arrows and keep moving. It's like that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what I do know of the Mongols is that, like you said, uh, they wouldn't necessarily blitz you, but they would fight from like a distance, and like,
Mhm.
I guess like in a way they would kind of like scatter you
Right, right, right.
with arrows. Yeah, which is why they probably were so like successful.
Surely, surely.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Mongols and success, are you familiar with Boch at all?
Now, who's that?
Boch is named after Buri Boch, who was a traditional Mongolian folk hero.
Yeah.
But Boch itself is the art of Mongolian wrestling.
Oh, okay.
And it's done in Inner Mongolia, I believe. It's done with leather jacket. In Outer Mongolia, I think they use like cotton and rope. Um, but it's really cool because the rules are very similar to sumo and judo in that you have these specific grips and you can grip any way you want, and your goal is to throw your opponent. And like sumo, any part of their body that touches the ground, they will be considered out, but there's no time limit. So you've actually had, I don't know if right now it's going on, but in the past few years, in the past few cycles in the Olympics, you've actually had quite a few Mongolians coming in from bulk, switching over to judo, competing and doing like really, really well. I believe a Mongolian who came over who had never competed in judo before actually won gold
Oh, really?
in
Oh,
judo
wow.
Olympics from bulk, uh, which is really cool. I really like studying these like weirder folk wrestling styles. Like
Yeah,
again,
they're like lesser known.
for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.